This is the Marketing Agency Power Hour, and I'm your host, Cal Wilder. Each week, we'll power through discussions on business challenges, success stories, and game-changing strategies. This show is sponsored by SmartBooks, provider of bookkeeping and accounting for marketing agencies. Let's get started. I'm very excited to be speaking to today's guest. She's an entrepreneur, a branding expert, a speaker, an advisor, and a leader for women. She's a global advisor with a focus on lifestyle brands, PR, and mission-driven organizations. She's also a passionate advocate and speaker for women, recently being named one of the 100 women to know in America for 2025. She's the founder and CEO of HVM Communications. Laura Henson, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Great to be speaking with you. So let me start off with the question I normally ask, which is, what is the single most powerful strategy for success in your marketing agency these days?
I would have to say that it is very intentional curation of our work, meaning aligning the right audience with our clients.
And so when you say the right audience, can you tell me more what you mean by that?
So, I think today the media landscape, we're specifically PR and communications, and the media landscape has changed so much. And understanding that we need to provide value to our clients, I feel like that can kind of be meaningless or meaningful. And press coverage is, earned media when you get free articles essentially that we secure on behalf of our clients. But it's really important that they're targeting the right, media outlets that are read or listened to or watched by the right demographic for your company or brand. Because what we found is that's not always the case. And then what does that really do for our client? And, the goal is obviously to not only amplify their voice and their brand and awareness of them, but also help them drive business.
You have situations where it's just hard to get the right channel with the right audience connected with your client or interested in talking about your client.
It's not always easy. And I think that's the thing, it requires research. It requires very intentional pitching and outreach. Again, reaching the right reporters or writers or producers who are going to align with your message and feel that it's right for their audience. That's not always black and white. But, sometimes PR agencies tend to just, kind of mass pitch, as we call it, and just hope, it's that idea of throwing it against a wall and seeing what sticks. And I think that no longer works, because even if something sticks, it may not be, your message may not be delivered to the right people.
Are you seeing, or to what extent are you seeing kind of the change in journalism, moving more to automated, less detailed, mass market, less investigative kind of media? How does that impact your job?
So, we are seeing with AI, of course, we're seeing a lot of changes, and I'm a big proponent of AI. When you're using it alongside of, the human side of work, that is, because in our case, example, it doesn't replace our work. We can get a lot of help from AI. When it comes to certain types of content. But what becomes obvious is when it's not authentically or authentic to the brand or the person. They're little signs, and it's obvious. And I have to say, editors and writers are starting to notice that in responses. You get a lot of comments that say, no chat GPT, no AI responses, because people are starting to figure it out.
Are there particular sectors or industries that you focus on?
We, in particular, focus on primarily women-led or purpose-driven organizations or businesses. That is not really a particular sector, really. It goes pretty wide. We work with a lot of clients in everything from finance and investing, like private equity, venture capital, to health tech, climate tech, leadership, again, kind of across the board, frankly.
And you've been managing your firm for a number of years at this point, right?
A while. I think it's about 20. Oh my goodness.
Have you always had this focus, or has it evolved over time?
No, not at all, in fact. It has evolved quite a bit over time. I started my career in luxury fashion, working in-house at fashion brands such as Hermès and Escada and Halston and kind of those well-known big luxury brands. And then I went out on my own and did some similar work and kind of evolved into, I would just say all sorts of fashion and retail and then lifestyle. And then we evolved over into beauty, health, and wellness, a little bit before the wellness trend really became a huge umbrella trend. But about 5 years ago is when we kind of flipped the business, and that had a lot to do with me personally. We are a small agency, so I was in a position to create a new category, which was women-led and purpose-driven. And we've really just focused on that ever since. I think that had to do with just a personal kind of awakening in that I wanted purpose and really felt driven and uplifted by the work that we're doing in this category.
And how have you found bringing in business and business development since you've kind of narrowed the focus? I think some people are kind of afraid of narrowing the focus, and then you might have to turn away people that want to work with you until you get enough of the people that you really want to work with, right?
That's a very funny life lesson I think throughout being an entrepreneur or a startup. Any type of service, certainly service focused agency or business. You always have that fear, right, of not having enough business or having too much, all of that type of thing. But what I found is by really narrowing our scope, we just, we're very good at this piece of it, and so we know that, and our entire reputation is based on referrals, frankly, and the way we get referrals is by doing a really good job for our clients. So by narrowing our focus, actually, we've been busier than ever. Um, and I think it's because we're so concentrated that we're able to really deliver value to our clients, and it seems to be working. So it's great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what are your dreams for your firm over the next 3 or 5 years?
Honestly, I love what I do. So, I'm very personally passionate about this category, and again, kind of honestly working with mostly women, but not only women, but kind of this purpose-driven idea. And so I really want to get people's expertise and stories out there in the world so that we can help make the future really the future that we want to see. And by working with a lot of these underrepresented founders and people who are, gosh, their innovations are incredible, right? They're doing incredible work, and they just don't always get the attention that others get naturally. So I'm just hoping that we can really help. I mean, this sounds big, but honestly, change the world for the better.
That's awesome.
It's a big goal. I need help.
Big goal, yes.
I'm just a cog in the wheel, but we're doing what we can.
What are some of the challenges you're facing or recently had to overcome?
I think that evolution and the quick pace of AI is creating a bit of a challenge. I think that I mean, we have clients who will sometimes return interviews to us that are clearly kind of written by AI, and we have to revamp those. So I would say one of the big challenges would be, and again, I no longer like the word authenticity because it's overused, but I think it's really a huge thing, and I think it's going to be the biggest thing moving forward, frankly. Um, so it's just really important to, again, remain authentic and in that meaning, being everything you do and say really should be aligned with who you are or what your business is and what you believe in. Um, and kind of walking the walk. So I think the biggest challenge would be, again, having having some misalignments in your messaging.
I think it's gonna be interesting to see how close AI can come to being an authentic representative of you, right? A couple years ago, there's no way you would ever, publish something that was written by AI because it just was not well done. You had to do so much editing to make it something that you'd be comfortable putting your name on. And now today, It's getting a lot closer to something that you might be willing to put your name on, but it's not there yet in a lot of cases. But it's getting closer and closer if you can train these models to talk and think like you and understand your values and objectives. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how close it gets.
I agree. I agree 100%. And like I said, I mean, already we take advantage of AI because it is so helpful. It saves us so much time. It's just that we of course, go back and ensure that everything that is being said is accurate and making the peaks and again getting the right voice. But you're right. I mean, and the future is going to be very interesting because it's just gonna get better and better and closer and closer. So, it will be very interesting, and again, I think the other thing is within who we are as people and what we're representing is to ensure as well that our messaging aligns with who we truly are, because the other thing is you're going to get busted very easily if you're not kind of walking the walk and you're just talking the talk. That's a very dangerous place for people, whereas before there was a little bit more behind closed doors, and that doesn't exist as much anymore, and it'll be less and less so.
How are you seeing the publications that you're trying to market your clients to utilizing AI?
On the back end, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm quite sure many of the writers are using it quite a bit, right? Of course. And honestly, with the way the media landscape has changed so much, so many writers are freelance and they're just have crazy deadlines. They have to churn out 10 articles a day or something. It gets a little nuts. So there's no doubt that there's a lot of AI being used there. But it's going to be helpful in filtering through everything for efficiency purposes and time saving, frankly. Again, I'm still a huge believer that you always need the human oversight there. So, because without it, you are going to put something out there in the world that who knows what could be inaccurate, but it could be a big flub and it could actually be incredibly uh, negative for somebody if they don't catch something like that before it goes public.
When you think about the kind of the value that you deliver to clients and you put it into different buckets, I think maybe there's a bucket for, the relationships and connections you have with publications and editors. Maybe there's a bucket to helping find the right channels. Maybe there's a bucket to helping the client refine their message or something. But like, how do you categorize the different buckets of value?
So we work a little bit unlike a traditional PR agency, which we were for many, many, in fact, until about 4 or 5 years ago. Um, Now, what I've realized again is media coverage is amazing. It's third party credibility, right? So, and that's very meaningful. Um, However, with the amount of media coverage out there, media outlets online, there's a lot of noise. So who's reading your article, right? Even if you're targeted to the right audience, that day people may be busy. Who knows what's going on in the world? So I think it's really critical to provide additional value. So we do a couple of things that I think many agencies probably do not do, although I don't know, maybe they do. So our main thing is earned media, getting people on stages, and we like to say in the right rooms because we find the value is really making the right introductions and having the media coverage as backup and credibility. It can kind of help seal deals, if you want to put it that way. But often it's through the actual relationship with your target client, whether it's, again, a client you're offering a product or service, or it's an investor or whatever that may be. Um, Making that connection and developing that relationship in the right space with them is how we provide value that is undeniable because you're making money, right? They're either investing in your business or investing in your fund or, you know, buying your services or products.
So, speaking of value and making money, my day job is running SmartBooks, the bookkeeping, accounting, and tax CFO services business. So, I'm going to ask you a couple questions about how you manage the books and the finances in your agency or firm, right? So like who do you have do the work and like how do you stay on top of that and manage it? And if there are particular reports that you like to see?
Yeah, so I certainly this would not be my strength, and I recognize that, and I actually had my CPA a million years ago say, "Why are you trying to do your bookkeeping yourself? It probably takes you 3 times as long when you could hire someone else and your time is valuable," et cetera, and so forth. So, that is what I've done. We outsource. We're a small company, so we outsource all of our, work and handle it that way. Um, I do love to kind of go into a QuickBooks and take a look and see what's going on. Sometimes it shocks me, but it's a critical piece of the business, obviously, ensuring that we're all set up from the accounting and the business side of things. Otherwise, you can't make a business run. So, I would certainly say, you know, to anyone out there, running their own business, get the help that you need to ensure that everything runs smoothly, because otherwise it could be the downfall of your business, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. You could be a great PR communications expert, but if the business is not profitable or cash flow positive, you don't have much of a business.
Yeah, and honestly, I'd say in PR, generally, that's probably not a strength of many founders. Um, if we tend to be more on the PR creative side, I'm not a numbers person, so I would be at a loss without assistance.
Are there any particular metrics or ratios or percentages or things like that that you like to keep an eye on?
Not particularly for me. Again, I'm not a numbers person. I do again work with the people who handle it for me, who just continue to update me and keep me in the know. Um, I do my best to understand some of the spreadsheets, et cetera, but again, not my strength. And again, so really having someone you can rely on is critical.
So it sounds like you've had a good solution in place for a while now. I'm curious if there's anything that you've learned the hard way, given you're not an accountant by trade. And if you learned anything the hard way you wish you had a do over for?
Indeed, I have. There was a time that my business was set up in a very wonky way because I just handled it myself in the early days. And I really did not seek professional help and, ran into some cash flow problems along the way early on. And frankly, it wasn't because we weren't doing, well in our business as far as clients and client acquisition and all of that. It was from not understanding the numbers and really running the business on the back end the way that it should have been run. It was an eye-opening experience and, one that I wouldn't wanna repeat.
Yeah, cash flow is a tough one. Could you run the P&L and QuickBooks, and that's what everybody defaults to. Business owners, they look at the P&L, they see what their revenue is, they see what their profit is, the bottom line, and they think they're good. But then you can pull up no one wants to look at the balance sheet, and nobody looks at the cash flow statement, right? And so you need somebody who's looking at the other two financial statements too.
It's absolutely true, and I think the other piece to that is, as in within a service-related business such as ours, we're under a contract with clients for 6 to 12 months typically, and you're always counting on, again, like, counting on this amount of, revenue coming in, but things happen, right? And so if you're not on top of that, then again, very quickly, everything can get very off balance, and you can get into a little bit of trouble.
Well, cool. Well, I think we've probably talked enough about accounting and finance. I don't want to bore the audience too much. Let me circle back to PR and the future of your firm. What I know you're trying to, save the world, which is awesome. I think, or something like that. You said, but what specifically is exciting to you? What was it? Improve lives? What did you say exactly?
So what's really exciting for me, honestly, right now is I work with a lot of incredible trailblazing women who are doing very innovative things, right? And I am really excited about the great wealth transfer that's happening, where on frankly, women are going to come into trillions and trillions of dollars And my hope for that is that um, around financial literacy and investing and all of these pieces that women actually know what to do with that money, and use it for good. And when I say that, I don't mean give it away by any means. I mean, invest it for good or create good and just do good with it because I also believe that you can be purpose driven and make a lot of money at the same time. So that's what I'm finding very exciting right now. And there's a lot of news and kind of conversation around that subject. And so we're working on that with a lot of our clients right now because it frankly kind of trickles into almost every realm of life, frankly.
Yeah. What size clients do you work with?
We work with all sizes. I've said this before and it's interesting because we don't again we don't say, oh, we have to, a company has to be this big or a person or something like that. We really base it on what they're doing, again, their mission. And frankly, a lot of it is their belief and desire to work with us and the trust factor because we've worked with some really small founders within very small companies who have felt the value in hiring us was there, even though it was a budget constraint for them, very, very likely. Um, but they put their trust in us, that we would be able to, in fact, help their bottom line or help get them investors. And that part of it actually makes me really happy. I'm always just almost a little overcompensate for those, very young, not meaning young in age, but young founders who trust us with really helping grow their business and in a way taking a little bit of a chance on hiring PR early on when they're really not necessarily budgeted for it. Or sometimes they actually give us their marketing budget, which is again, it's just we feel frankly honored when that happens.
I would hypothesize, and I could be very well be wrong about this, but I would hypothesize in the for-profit space, it's easier when you're a smaller business to, quote unquote, do good and make money because you can have a niche market, a niche customer base. You can extract, wide profit margins while still delivering something that, you might consider meaningful and improving the world. But then you get to a certain size and making money becomes more and more important. And it's harder and harder to do a lot of good and make a lot of money if you're a really big business. Maybe big nonprofits can do that, but maybe big for profits it's harder.
Well, I think, I guess it depends on the definition of doing good, right? So, I guess in a way, and again, I say purpose driven, it's not necessarily mission driven for us, but it's just adding value, right? And again, not doing honestly bad things, like having a company cult, internal company culture where you support. I mean, frankly, and I'm happy to say this, regardless of what's going on in the world, but, a diverse culture in your company, and understanding that the value add by having different people's perspectives and all of those types of things. So, I think you can run a really large company. I think it probably has something to it's a client of ours actually, Lena McDermott of River, who says, you start with your non-negotiables, and you just can't veer from that no matter how big you grow. And there are certain non-negotiables, which are things you will not let happen that you believe are misaligned with your values. And if you can stick to that, you're probably pretty good, but there's no doubt it must get harder and harder. And especially the bigger the teams and look, things fall through the cracks and things happen, but overall I think it's possible.
I mean, I guess it all depends on that definition, right? If you look at Google as an example, you could argue they're doing good for the world because people want to do business with them. Or you could argue they've really strayed from the initial foundational mission of like organizing the world's knowledge and not being evil or whatever that big claim was. And now they do a lot of things that are debatable. You know?
And it's true. I mean, I think it's very true. It's like, what is your definition of, again, like doing okay or not being bad, not being evil? And there's always going to be, it's just like with influencers, frankly. I mean, You could be a young girl who's creating fitness videos only, and that's all she's doing, and then she gets haters, that's inevitable. Regardless, you can always find something wrong with what somebody's doing or try to create something, but, yeah, I think it's probably value driven by the people in charge. I mean, leadership, companies start with it's the leadership down, so the company culture and everything else trickles down. Um, but but yeah, I mean, you see a lot of evolution and I can't say what makes something good or bad necessarily, but it's all in the opinion. And now you're starting to see consumers respond to that, right? I mean, they'll boycott a company if they think what they're doing is not aligned with their values. And again, their values may differ from the leadership and the company's values. My values may differ. I may say I won't work with a company because of this, but it's not like they're doing anything really horrible. It just doesn't align with.
In hindsight, I should have used a different example because I don't want to be censored or banned on YouTube for my comments about Google. I should have used Microsoft as an example.
No, I think in a way it goes back to the idea of ethical versus responsible AI. Like, what is that? Because what's ethical and who makes that decision versus responsible? It sounds a little easier to me, but who decides that too? So it's all a little up in the air.
So we've been talking a lot about business and issues around the business, but I'm curious to understand a little bit more about your own, life story and how you got to where you are now. Like when you were, little Laura, did you think you'd be one day owning and managing your own business?
So little Laura wanted to be a pathologist in the very beginning. Little Laura used to watch Quincy, and I don't know why I wanted to do that, but clearly had some morbid fascination with death or something. But as I got older, I thought I wanted to go into international business, and things just kind of moved and moved and moved. And what got me into PR actually was my love for fashion. And I spent a year in school in Paris and just had an incredible experience in that kind of world of fashion at the time and became totally enamored with it. And that's how I kind of evolved into this. I did a couple of other stints in the more in the business side of fashion before I landed in PR, but I discovered along the way from working hand in hand with a PR agency on a fashion business that's what I really loved.
And so you worked at some of these, big high profile firms, right? And then what was the path to starting your own business?
The path to start well, I'd it's so when I was younger, before I moved I'm from Atlanta, Georgia originally, and I'd lived several places, but moved back to Atlanta before moving to New York, and I started my own business there. So I guess I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit. I never really thought of it that way at the time, but looking back, um, I always kind of liked to start and do business, like create businesses, and I always kind of had something going on the side when I was working for other companies as well. Um, and so then working in fashion in New York was incredible. Again, a lot of very I had a very fortunate career path in the fashion world. And after having some big jobs, in total transparency, I was feeling a little burned out, and thought maybe now's the time. I thought about starting my own business. It was just a question of am I going to be able to make it? Am I going to have clients? There was a lot of fear, especially in New York City. Um, and I don't know, the time was right. And that's when I went out on my own.
How did you get your first few clients?
Well, I was fortunate with that as well. So I had been working in-house at a jewelry, brand and let them know that I wanted to start my own agency and ideally have them as a client, and that worked out. So they were, in fact, my first client. And then, I had also been, discussing, the idea of starting my own agency with some people that I'd worked with previously. And, another woman, was talking about the same thing, and between our contacts, we, landed a really big fashion account, which was in Missoni. We launched them in the US. And so that was a pretty spectacular way to start my own business. So I was incredibly fortunate in that. And from there, it just kind of, it just moved forward. Um, yeah, I've been very fortunate.
Yeah, I would say you brought a lot of skill to the table as well as some luck, maybe.
Well, when I was young, we used to work like 14-hour days and be at work until 10 o'clock on a Friday. I don't think that exists so much anymore, but those were the kind of hours I was willing to put in to get there. And so it paid off.
And so, with the current agency, do you tend to partner with other agencies for different parts of client engagements, or more or less you're on your own?
We do on occasion. It really depends on what it is. I love a collaboration and a partnership when we're all aligned and we can bring value to each other. So, the answer to that is yes. And we've partnered with other PR agencies. We've partnered with marketing. We've partnered with a lot of different types of agencies. We've also, helped create collaborations for certain clients. And so then we're really, in partnership on certain things with a variety of departments or agents.
Yeah, sometimes there are folks in the audience who may need somebody to help with certain parts of engagement for clients. So that's why I asked that question.
Yeah, and I think it's wonderful to your point. We there's certain things we don't do. So, one thing we're very strong at is thought leadership, for example, for like the founder or CEO or CMO, whatever, the spokespeople for companies. But, at the same time, we're not really able to promote like fashion products like a pretty dress at this point. That's not really what we do. So we would work with another agency to collaborate on those pieces so that the client is really getting the best of both and really maximizing their PR coverage from more of a 360 view versus partial. Because I do think you find a lot of times if you hire outside agencies, everyone's not good at everything, and that's fine.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah.
So when you're not working and running HVM, what do you like to do outside of work?
I have a son, who's 14, and, he and my husband and I love to go upstate and go skiing, and we have a huge dog named Earl, who's a crazy Picardy Shepherd and, love taking him out, and other than that, I love yoga, and I love to read, interestingly enough, young adult fantasy novels and, like, things like that, like, kind of a take me away.
All right, very active outside of work.
Well, it's very different from my work, right? It's the other side, so, I think we're all multifaceted, so, it's great, yeah.
Where do you like to go skiing up in upstate?
We have a house up at Wyndham Ski Mountain in New York, so we go up there a lot of weekends in the winter. I prefer to fly to Europe to ski, but that's not happening on the weekends, so.
And you also are into, yoga and health coaching, right? You mentioned when we spoke earlier.
So I'm certified as an integrative nutritionist and a yoga teacher, but, I don't do anything with those certifications. They were more or less for, like, it was my personal interest. I've always been very personally, kind of, eh, active and really like working out and being active. And the nutrition fell into it at one point when we worked with a doctor who, was a cardiologist and her clients were basically on her table because, of the obesity issue in the US, and through working with her and learning all of this information from her, I became absolutely kind of obsessed personally with learning more about nutrition and decided to take it like 5 steps further and get certified. So I don't again, it's just all kind of the personal passion. I'm in that space right now around investing and learning more about personal finance. Not going to get certified in anything. I don't have that kind of time, but I'm going down that rabbit hole at this point in my life. So I get on these little jags that really fascinate me, and kind of can't stop until I've learned everything I can.
Yeah, I'm a little bit similar in that way. I'm working on certification in functional medicine myself, although, I'm not sure I'm going to make the time to actually officially complete it and actually do something with it, or maybe I just complete it so I complete it and, have it done since I've put in so much time. But we'll see. I think it's important to have these intellectual curiosities outside of work so we keep learning and growing and don't get too mentally stagnant. So I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, and I have to say, the functional medicine, understanding, I mean, you're steps ahead of all of us if you get that done. It's so, fascinating, frankly, and, I think it's so important, especially in today's world with, so much there's so much wrong with our food and, our food culture and a lot of things going on in the world where functional medicine is very helpful to have some knowledge.
Yeah, I think a lot of our problems, we don't need to go down too far down this rabbit hole, but a lot of our problems could be solved. A lot of our health problems could be solved through more of a functional medicine approach, in my belief, rather than our current approach, which is kind of the opposite.
I could not agree with you more. Yes, we have some food sensitivities and allergies in our family, and um, a lot of this could have been avoided had we known certain things. And again, uh, it's always interesting. I have a gluten sensitivity, so I went to Paris a couple weeks ago for something, and could eat all the gluten I wanted there. Go figure. If I eat here, I'm down for the count. There, give some baguettes and croissants, and I'm a happy girl.
Yeah, I've heard similar things about people who travel to Italy. Same deal.
Yeah, makes no sense to me because it's gluten itself versus supposed processing. But again, I'm not an expert in it, so I don't know enough about it. I would love to know the actual reason why and see if that's something we could change. But yeah,
Cool. Well, we don't need to keep talking about nutrition and healthcare either. Since it's a marketing podcast, but interesting rabbit hole though.
yeah, no doubt. Everyone knows I have a gluten sensitivity, so
So, Lauren, if folks, want to follow up with you and talk one-on-one, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
The best is to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I love connecting on LinkedIn and I do respond to my DMs. Um, in fact, I'm incredibly active on it. So that is really the best way to reach me or personally or at www.hvmcommunications.com. And that's H as in horse, V as in Victor, M as in monkey, dot, not sorry, dot hvmcommunications.com.
All right. Well, everybody, you know how to reach her. If you have any questions about PR or yoga or health coaching or skiing or anything.
I don't know about that, but
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show, Laura, and sharing your story and what you're trying to accomplish with HVM. It reminds me of a couple other guests I had on earlier when we started this series that had kind of similar focus on purpose-driven organizations. So I think it's great to have a diversity of guests with different stories to share. So thank you so much.
well, thank you. It's really been great to chat and I've enjoyed it. So thank you.
So for those listening, if you've enjoyed the conversation, please spread the word about this podcast. Let other agency owners know it exists. So thanks again, Laura.
Thank you.
This has been another exciting episode of the Marketing Agency Power Hour. We'll see you all next time. Another episode in the books. Thank you so much for tuning in. For show notes and more, please visit marketingagencypowerhour.com. This show is sponsored by SmartBooks, providing marketing agencies with bookkeeping, accounting, and finance support. With SmartBooks, you gain the clarity and confidence to make your agency a success. Until next time.